Cover the entire syllabus of CA Interlaw in just 50 hours with my fast track lectures, where we cover all the important sections, concepts, and prepare last minute revision notes. To enroll, visit my website capreetyagarwal.com and continue to watch the demo session. Hello everyone, welcome to the first lecture of the CA Intercorporate and Other Laws Fast Track Batch with me, CA Preeti Agarwal. Let's learn law like never before. Students, in my previous video, I had discussed the weightage of these chapters. I hope you made a note of it. In today's session, we are going to start our discussion of types of companies. Now, there is one chapter, preliminary, which I have not covered on purpose. We are first going to revise what was already done in foundation. So let us go through the chapters, types of companies, incorporation, MOA, so that, we are in the gear of studying. And after we finish that, I will start with preliminary chapter and then we will go in a sequence. So our approach, I have already discussed. We will prepare charts. Now, in order to save time, I have already prepared those charts for you. I will show you the flow in which I have prepared. I have already highlighted certain things for you. Now, why have I done this? It is purely to save time. I want to cover maximum in these 50 hours. We will not only discuss the theory, but we will also discuss questions and I will give you homework questions also for writing practice. So I don't want to waste time in writing and then you copy it. That is why I have already done this work. Okay, so these are the charts. I'm quickly going to discuss this. We are going to highlight the important words. See, these are the key words which are important for exam. So I've already done that homework for you. So after we discuss everything, then we will discuss a few questions from my compiler. The compiler is not included in the fast track lectures, but it can be purchased separately from my website. So this is the compiler. So this is the compiler. It is a compilation of all the past exam questions, study material, RTP, MTP questions arranged unit-wise. I'll show you a soft copy also. So this is my compiler, which is a compilation of all the exam questions, study material, RTP, MTP questions. It has full-length answers. If you want, you can add this separately to these fast-track lectures. We are also going to discuss the important questions from this book. So chart making, okay, everything will be discussed. All the charts, we will highlight the key points, words, section numbers, forms, etc., which I want you to remember. And after that, we will solve the important questions from my compiler. I will also be giving you homework questions for writing practice. You will write it and send it to me for checking. So this is going to be our approach. So let's quickly get started without wasting again a single minute. Okay, so you will not find this in the ICAI module. This is one chapter which is there in my textbook. The reason is that they have combined all the definitions, types of companies, everything into one chapter, that is preliminary, and then another chapter, incorporation. But what I have done is all the types of companies are in chapter 2A, then 2B covers incorporation of company, MOA, etc. So in types of companies, I have already highlighted there are two types of questions which can be asked, case-based as well as theory questions. Case-based questions can be asked on OPC, private company, government company, Section 8 company, and small company. Direct application, that is theory question. Although the framing may be like a case-based question, but you're expected to write the theory. Questions may be asked on foreign company, holding and subsidiary, associate, guarantee company, and listed company. MCQ questions can be asked on OPC, Section 8 company, small company, and private company. I've already shared with you MCQ booklet if you have purchased the Whitebook option. So MCQ as well as the case-based MCQ booklet has already been shared with you. Please refer that for MCQ. All right. So these are the type of questions that can be asked. Now, the section numbers which are important for exam have already been highlighted for you. Please pause the video and highlight this in your textbook. These are the section numbers that you have to compulsorily remember because questions have been asked in the exam and they can be asked. Institute expects you to write these section numbers in the exam. So we have associate company, foreign company, government, holding company, listed company. This can also be asked as a case-based question. The reason I have highlighted this is it has not been very frequently asked in the past. So there are high chances that a new type of question may be framed for your attempt. So listed company, I have highlighted, it is expected as a case-based question. One-person company, private and public company, small company, subsidiary company, and Section 8 company. Now, these are the important section numbers. When we come to this part, I will also highlight the provisions on which these case-based questions or theory questions are generally asked. Like, for example, when we discuss foreign company, I know that the definition is important as well as Rule 2 is important where it defines electronic mode. So when we come to that part, I will make you highlight the provisions on which the questions are asked. So this is only a list that you need to learn along with the section numbers. All right, got it? Now, these are the rules that you need to memorize, although I have given only 3. Out of that, if you feel that, ma'am, it's not possible for me to remember all, at least memorize Rule 2. It is very important for exam. So what will you memorize? Rule 2, it provides the electronic meaning. It provides the meaning of electronic mode for a foreign company, and Rule 2 also prescribes the amount of paid-up capital and turnover for a small company, which is 4 crores and 40 crores respectively. So please memorize Rule 2, okay? Also, you need to write Rule 2 of Company's Specification of Definition Detail Rules 2014. So don't just write Rule 2 in the exam. Also write Rule 2 of the Company's Specification of Definition Detail Rule 2014. So if you are not able to remember anything, at least memorize this and go. Applicable forms. It may not be asked in the exam, but it is my observation that a few case-based or MCQ questions are asked on OPC, and over there you may be expected to write the form numbers. That is why I have highlighted that you need to memorize form number INC2, INC3 and INC4. These relate to OPC. Later, we are also going to discuss INC6, that is conversion of OPC. Okay, so 2, 3, 4 and 6. Yes, these form numbers are important because recently they have started asking questions on conversion or how to change the nominee of the OPC. So yes, I want you to remember these form numbers. So students, please make note of these important markings. Done already? Very good. So let us proceed now. The first concept that we are going to discuss is of a one-person company. In foundation, they would ask what is the classification on the types of companies on the basis of control liability, but I don't think so at your level they are going to ask such basic questions. So let us jump directly to the concept of a one-person company. Now, this is a very important concept because it can be asked as theory, case-based, MCQ. We don't know what kind of question can be asked because it is important for all 3 types of questions. So what I have done is I have prepared a small note for you. Now, please pay a lot of attention. Don't just jump into writing this. First, understand what you're writing. Pause the video and then you write it in your notebook in the same flow that I have mentioned. All right. So first, listen to the explanation and then you can pause the video and write. I repeat, I have prepared such notes in order to save time. Whatever time is saved, I will utilize it for solving questions. I want to discuss maximum questions, MCQs, which I feel are important and cover everything in just 50 hours. Now, let us discuss the concept of a one-person company. Whenever I discuss this in the regular batch, we normally start with why a one-person company is incorporated. Why will someone not prefer doing business as a proprietor and instead incorporate a one-person company? What are the benefits of a one-person company? But that is only for our discussion. It is not going to be asked in the exam. At this stage, you are already aware of the concept of one-person company. Let us now discuss things which are really important for exam. Please pay attention. There's a flow. Okay, there is a proper flow. I want you to know that so that you will be able to convert this into an answer. Please note, students, just one sentence needs to be memorized. The next sentence can be framed on the basis of the previous sentence. I will teach you how to make the entire answer by writing and memorizing just one sentence. Okay, so just one sentence needs to be memorized, and with the help of that sentence, you can frame the next sentence with the help of that sentence, and the entire answer will be framed. So pay attention to the note. One-person company. One person. It means that there is only one person in that company. minimum 1, maximum also 1. If we have only one member in the company, what if something happens to that member? Who will take decisions? Who will vote as a member? Because there is maximum just one member, we need a nominee. So nominee is a person who shall, in the case of the subscriber's death or incapacity to contract, become the member. So at the time of incorporation itself, member will identify and appoint a nominee. Okay? So because maximum there's just one member, we need to make sure that there is perpetual succession maintained. Yes, it's a company. So how will you ensure that the company continues? We have a nominee. Nominee shall become the member in case the subscriber, that is the person who has started the company, the subscriber dies or becomes incapable to contract. This nominee, how will I know who is the nominee appointed? How will I know? It's a very logical question. We are framing the answer. So you need to apply logical steps. One person company, it means minimum 1 and maximum also just 1. If there's maximum just one member, what if something happens to that member? For that, we appoint a nominee. Who is a nominee? He is a person who shall in the event of the death or incapacity of the subscriber become the member of the company. Then he will appoint another nominee in his place. This process continues and this is nothing but perpetual succession. How will I know who is the nominee? The name of the nominee is mentioned in the memorandum. Can a minor become a nominee? No, a minor cannot become nominee. Minor cannot even be the member of the OPC. So minor cannot be a nominee. Can I write any person's name as a nominee? Anyways, this is just a formality. No, the person whose name you write, he will have to give his consent to act as a nominee. That consent will be obtained from him in form INC 3. How will I remember the form names? This relates to incorporation. See, you are forming a one-person company. When you form a one-person company, you need to obtain the consent of that nominee. Because it is related to incorporation of OPC, it is INC. INC means that form indicates it is related to incorporation. So the purpose is mentioned in the form name itself. So can I appoint anyone as nominee? No, we need to obtain his consent. He should agree to act as nominee and that consent is obtained in form INC 3. Yes, we will file this form with ROC, that written consent. It has to be obtained in writing. So the written consent will also be filed with ROC. He has for now given his consent. Can he later on withdraw his consent as a nominee? Yes. Nominee may withdraw his consent. Did you get the logical flow? What is the logical flow? Only one person can start a one-person company, minimum 1, maximum also 1. There is only one member. What if something happens to him? Then in that case, we appoint a nominee. The name of the nominee will be mentioned in the memorandum. How will I know who is the nominee? Refer the memorandum. Can a minor become a nominee? No, minor cannot be appointed as a nominee. We need to obtain a consent of the nominee. Can the nominee withdraw his consent? Yes, consent can be withdrawn. So I have connected the words. Okay, I have connected the words. Now, what is the procedure to be followed in case the nominee withdraws his consent? Ma'am, do we need to memorize all this? Yes, it is asked as MCQ question. So it is important for you. Now, this is the entire flowchart that I have prepared. You need to memorize this. How to memorize? I have given you the steps 1, 2, 3 and 4. So the entire part is covered in just 4 steps. The nominee, if he wants to withdraw his consent, will give a notice in writing to the member and OPC. Okay, so see how I have written. The nominee, if he wants to withdraw his consent, will give a notice of withdrawal in writing to the member and the one-person company. See, why do we need to give it to both? Because one-person company is a separate person in the eyes of law. So we not only inform the member so that, he should come to know that the nominee is withdrawing, but we also need to inform the OPC because it's a separate person. So nominee will give a notice in writing of his withdrawal to the member as well as OPC. Now the member has come to know that nominee is withdrawing his consent. He will have to quickly find another nominee for himself. because he cannot keep that place vacant. The nominee shall, the member shall, within 15 days from the notice of withdrawal, okay, within 15 days from the time he receives the notice of withdrawal. So once he comes to know about the notice of withdrawal, within 15 days of the notice of withdrawal, he will nominate another person as nominee. The member will then intimate the OPC that, listen OPC, I have appointed someone else as his nominee. This is his consent, INC 3. So the member will then intimate the OPC in writing along with the consent of the new nominee. So he will intimate in writing the name of the nominee that he has appointed, and he will also attach the written consent of the new nominee that will be given in INC 3. Now the OPC comes to know that nominee has changed. The OPC will inform the ROC. Listen ROC, we have changed the nominee because the nominee withdrew his consent. The OPC shall, see from where I have drawn the arrow. The OPC shall, within 30 days of receipt of the notice of withdrawal. So as soon as they receive, the nominee has withdrawn his consent. So within 30 days of the receipt of notice of withdrawal, they will file with the ROC INC 4 as well as INC 3. Now what is written in INC 4? INC 4 is filed to inform the ROC about change in the nominee, or it is also filed when the member changes. Like member dies, so nominee becomes the member, so member has changed. That time also we file INC 4. So within 30 days of receipt of the notice of withdrawal, so see the calculation, okay? Nominee has given notice of withdrawal. Within 15 days, the member will nominate another person. And from this notice of withdrawal, within 30 days, okay? So all the calculations are from the notice of withdrawal. So within 30 days, the OPC will also file INC 4 and INC 3 with the ROC. INC 4 I have mentioned is for change of nominee, but I also informed you the same form will be filed when we change the member also, in case the member dies or he becomes incapable and the nominee has become a member. The consent of the new nominee will be now filed with ROC. So ROC comes to know about the new nominee as well as the consent of the new nominee. So the flow is properly mentioned over here. Now, can the member, I remind you students, don't be in a hurry to copy. You can always go back, pause the video and write. I have given you sufficient time for all this. Don't worry that my lecture time will get exhausted. Don't worry about that time. I will extend it, but you first understand the concept. Can the member also voluntarily change the nominee? Yes, that is possible. The member shall intimate the one-person company in writing about the change of nominee. I'm not happy with the nominee, or maybe they got into some dispute, or nominee died. So member will intimate the OPC in writing of the change of nominee. They will also the member will also nominate another person, and the consent of that new nominee will be obtained in INC 3. Once the OPC comes to know about it, within 30 days of receiving the intimation from the member, the OPC will then file a change of the nominee in INC 4 with ROC along with the consent of the new nominee. That consent is given in INC 3. See the way in which I have highlighted in green. Okay, because this is what is happening between member and OPC. This is what is happening between OPC and ROC. Okay, so this is how I have prepared the note. If you read and learn this, you will be able to convert this directly into sentence form in the exam, right? Any change in the nominee will not be considered as alteration of memorandum. These are the important forms that I want you to remember. INC 2 is filed for incorporation of OPC. INC 3, consent to act as nominee. INC 4, change in the nominee or member of OPC. INC 6 is application for conversion of OPC into either a private or a public company. These are the forms which I want you to remember. Now, please pause the video and copy all this, and then I will proceed to the next word, that is person. So please copy this in your notebook. Write only for one, okay? Write only what we have discussed. so that it is memorized immediately. Write only this part. Okay, yes, pause the video now. Done. All right, continue writing. I hope you're writing only this. And then the note, what happens in case the nominee withdraws the consent, and what happens in case the member changes the nominee. Please also mention this. And the last one. All right. Now, let us go to the next word, that is person. Person includes artificial person as well as natural person. Artificial means it does not take birth like a natural person. Natural person means it takes birth. So this word person actually includes both natural as well as artificial. But as far as OPC is concerned, they have very specifically mentioned that this person is only a natural person. So only a natural person can form a one-person company. Okay. Now we are discussing the word person. Only a natural person who is a citizen of India, Indian citizen, whether resident in India or not. Many students get confused over here. Please note, students, even a non-resident Indian, it means that even if he is not in India, even for a single day, he can still become member as well as nominee of OPC. This is the eligibility. Only a natural person and a citizen of India, whether resident in India or not, can become member and nominee of OPC. So the eligibility criteria is same for member as well as nominee. Because they have mentioned the word resident, we need to define it. Means a person who stays in India for more than 120 days in the immediately, please note this, immediately preceding financial year. Immediately preceding financial year. Even a non-resident Indian can become a member as well as nominee of OPC. A person cannot be a member in two OPCs. He cannot be nominee in two OPCs. But can he be member in one, nominee in another? Yes. But what if the OPC where he is a nominee, the member dies, then that nominee becomes a member. He's already a member in another OPC. So he cannot be a member in two OPCs. Are you getting me? I said a person can be a member in one OPC, nominee in another OPC. But what if the OPC where he is a nominee, the member dies? Now he has become a member. He cannot be a member in two OPCs. So he has to decide the OPC in which he wants to continue, and that decision must be taken within 180 days. So this is everything related to person. Please pause the video and write this. Done. Okay. Let us now discuss the points relating to company. Right. The one-person company cannot be either incorporated or converted into a Section 8 company. Section 8 company is a non-profit organization. So you cannot incorporate, you cannot even convert a one-person company into a Section 8 company. But can I convert a one-person company into either a private or a public company? Yes, that is possible. One-person company cannot carry out non-banking financial investment activities. You cannot even purchase the shares of another body corporate. So it means that if I am a one-person company, I cannot purchase shares in my name. But can the member purchase shares of another company in his name? Yes, that is possible. The OPC can allot shares to that one member only. In other words, OPC cannot allot shares to persons other than its member. So shares of OPC can be allotted to just one member. No other person can become the member by purchasing shares of OPC. Alright. So you cannot incorporate or even convert an OPC into Section 8 company. You can, however, convert it into either private or public company. You cannot carry out non-banking financial activities, investment activities if you are a one-person company. A one-person company cannot purchase shares of another body corporate, but can the member purchase shares? Yes, in his name. We can allot shares of OPC to that one member only. Please pause the video and write this. So this is your entire note. In this, the entire concept of one-person company is covered, along with the steps to be followed when we change the nominee or he withdraws his consent. All right. Let us now read all this from our textbook and also highlight the provisions on which questions are generally asked. Now, only a natural person, citizen of India, whether resident in India or not, shall be eligible to incorporate a one-person company and be a nominee. Please note, students, case-based questions are asked on this part, eligibility. Okay? Whether resident in India or not, resident means he stays for 120 days, can be asked as a case-based question or can also be asked as MCQ. They will say 182 days, 181 days, 120 days. So you need to select the option 120 days. Okay. Other points I have already covered. Over here, when a natural person being a member becomes member in another OPC, it means you were member in one, nominee in other. Now, where you were nominee, the member dies. Now, you're a member in two companies. You have to decide within 180 days. So, please highlight 180 days. It can be asked as MCQ question. Within how many days should we decide? 180 days. They can also convert this into a case-based question. They will give you a scenario. A person is member in one, nominee in another. Where he was a nominee, the member dies. So, now he wants to continue into, can he do so? They will frame a scenario. So please note that this can also be asked as a case-based question. So MCQ as well as case-based question. You can pause the video whenever you want. You can pause it, write what I have written. Nominee can withdraw. Member can also change the nominee. This can be asked as MCQ. There is one MCQ and I will discuss that with you when we come to question answer solving. Okay. So this please highlight can be asked as MCQ. There is one MCQ in my MCQ Smart Book also. We will solve that later. Minor cannot become member of OPC. OPC cannot be incorporated, converted into Section 8. All this can be asked as MCQ. This particular point can be asked as case-based question. OPC cannot be converted or incorporated as a Section 8 company. But it can be asked as MCQ also, MCQ plus case-based. It cannot carry out non-banking financial investment activities. The name will mention the word private because it is a special kind of private company. Okay. So this is important for MCQ and this one is important for case-based. Okay. Sorry, this bullet point is important for case-based also. So did you highlight the important things? Yes. Okay. Now let us move ahead. These are the relaxations to a one-person company. May be asked as a theory question. It has never been asked but can be asked. Other relaxations available. It can also be asked in combination with some case-based question. So I have highlighted the important words. You can pause the video and highlight that in your textbook. One-person company is not required to prepare cash flow. There's nothing to explain here. You need to just memorize it. Cash flow is not required. Annual return. Okay. Annual return under Section 92 can be signed by the director and it is not compulsory that it should be signed by a company secretary. Abridged annual return in MGT 7A. This we will study in Management and Administration chapter also. So because there is just one director, it will be signed by a director. And I have a small note over here also, signing of annual return. Okay, you can copy this note. Generally, the annual return, in case of one-person company and small company, is to be signed by a company secretary. But it's a very small company or I'm a one-person company. I don't have a company secretary. It can be signed by a director. Okay, annual return should be signed by a company secretary. And if you don't have a company secretary, then by director. But in case of other companies, if you have a company secretary, a whole-time company secretary, then one director and company secretary will sign. If you don't have a company secretary, then director and company secretary in practice will sign. So can I say, in case of other companies, CS has to sign whether whole time or in practice. But relaxation is given to a one-person company. If you don't have a company secretary, then it is sufficient if the annual return is signed by director only. Annual return can now be prepared in the abridged form in Form 7A. So that is one amendment which was made a few attempts back. So annual return can be signed by a director, not necessarily a company secretary. Even abridged annual return may be prescribed. Only one director signs the audited financial statements. Abridged form of director report may be prescribed. Annual general meeting is not necessary because there is just one person. What will he discuss with himself? And there are other relaxations which are given for extraordinary meeting also and other general meetings. Only one board meeting may be held in each half of the calendar year. Generally, it is 4 meetings, one in every quarter, but here only 2. The gap, however, between the 2 board meetings should be of at least 90 days. Because if I hold the meeting, now this is calendar year, okay, please highlight this also. Calendar year. It means Jan to December. Now, one half will be Jan to September and other will be October. Jan to June and other will be July to December. Now, I held one meeting on 1st of June and the other on 1st of July. I just met 1 month back. Okay. So, then what is there to discuss? No? That is why we say that it's not just a formality. The gap should be of at least 90 days. So, you cannot hold the next board meeting on 1st of July. At least 90 days gap between the previous board meeting and the next meeting. So just 2 meetings, one in each calendar year, but the gap between these 2 meetings should be of at least 90 days. The OPC are allowed to file the financial statements within 6 months from the close instead of the 30 days. So these are relaxations which are available to a one-person company. I have highlighted the keywords can be asked as a theory question. Done. Okay. Next, we have a private company. So that was all about one-person company. Now let us discuss the concept of a private company. What kind of questions can be expected on private company? It is something which is very simple. Now, generally they ask question on the maximum number. Okay. Generally, case-based questions are asked on this part, but you need to know the 3 restrictions also because you need to mention the restrictions in the theory part of that answer. Okay, so not just this, but you also need to memorize what are the restrictions. So private company, there's no minimum paid up capital prescribed. There are 3 restrictions in the articles. It restricts the right to transfer shares. The maximum number is restricted to 200 and it prohibits invitation to the public. It means a private company cannot offer its securities to the public for subscription. It can go for private placement. There is a restriction on the right to transfer shares. So what is the keyword over here? We cannot transfer shares to anyone. It can be transferred only to a choice of circle of friends and relatives. Because the word relative is mentioned over here, we need to define it. So the relative is defined under section 2, clause 77 of the Act. They are members of HUF, husband, wife, and anyone related to the other in a manner prescribed. Where is it prescribed? It is prescribed in Rule 4 of the Company Specification of Definition Detail Rules 2014. Ma'am, do we need to learn all this? Although it is not asked in the exam, but yes, you are expected to be aware of it. So it is to be restricted to only people whom I know. It's a close-knit, generally family-owned companies. So these are the relatives. Yes, now very important for case-based questions. There is another restriction on the maximum number of members. See, minimum we need 2 members to incorporate a private company. Maximum we can have only 200 members. Members maximum 200. Who is not included while calculating this limit of 200? We will not include the current as well as ex-employees. Current employees who are holding the shares, they are not included. Ex-employees, the ones who have left the employment, but they continue to retain the shares of the company. So they are continuing as shareholder, but they have left the company as employee. Now, why are they not included? Because I want that the companies that want, not I, the companies that wants that we should allot shares to employees so that they feel associated with the company. Now, imagine tomorrow you clear your CA exam and you are employed in Infosys. They give you 5 shares of Infosys. Suddenly you start feeling a part of that company. You work hard for the company, you want to increase the profitability of the company because the profit increases, share price increases, the shares which are with you, that price will also increase. So the employees feel associated, they feel motivated. That is why we encourage, I give them, but I have 400 employees. If I include them in the number 200, then I will not be able to give any shares to outsiders. So in order to encourage the company to give more and more shares to employees, and don't worry, we will not include them in the limit of 200. So current as well as ex-employees, they're not included. Joint holders, they are considered as just one. Now, let's say, for example, that the members in my company are 199. Mr. and Mrs. Iyer, they purchase the shares jointly. 199 plus Mr. Iyer plus Mrs. Iyer. No. Mr. and Mrs. Iyer, they have purchased the shares jointly. They will be counted as just one. 199 plus 1, I have 200 members. No reduction is required. This is one important note that I have mentioned. These steps have to be followed in the given sequence only. First, you were an employee. Then we allotted shares to you and you became a member. Only when this sequence is followed, you will not be considered in that limit of 200. And I was already a member. Then I became an employee. No. Then I will include you in the number of maximum members 200. I repeat, if the steps are in this order, I'm an employee and then I was allotted shares so that I feel associated with the company, then I will not be considered in that limit of 200. But I was first a member, then I became employee. It means I was already associated with the company, no? So then I will be included in the maximum limit of 200. So this sequence is very important. There is a special note for directors, although it may not be asked in the exam, but I want you to be aware. I want you to know about it. Director is holding shares. Let's say that I am the director of a company, okay? I am holding shares of the company. Okay? As a director, I am holding shares. But I am also the employee of the company. Now, I am a director. I am holding shares. But I am also the whole-time company secretary. Then because I am an employee, I will not be included while calculating that number of 200 members. But I am a director who is holding shares. I am not an employee. I am simply a director holding shares. I will be included in the number 200. And we didn't understand. Wait, I have a question for you. Now, there is a company, Flora and Fauna Limited. It was registered as a public company. There are 230 members in the company. Now, these are the members. We have directors and their relatives, employees, ex-employees. Shares were allotted when they were employees. 5 couples are holding shares, so 10 shares, and others, that is 145. Now, they want to convert it into a private company. You have to advise whether reduction of members is necessary. Now, you try solving this question on your own and then I will discuss. Solved? Okay. So, will you consider directors while calculating the maximum number of 200? Yes, ma'am. Directors will be included. So, 50 directors. Will I include employees? No. Ex-employees? No. What about joint holders? Only 5. Will I include others? Yes. So, over here I have 190 employees. Is a reduction required? No. Now, please note, students. So, this is the answer, okay? You will show the calculation. Sorry. 55. Okay. 200. I read 45. Now, is a reduction required? No, it is not required. Now, did you notice, students, the word director, okay, this was included while calculating the maximum number of 200. Did you notice this? Yes. Now, these directors are only holding shares. They are not employees. So, they will be considered while calculating the maximum number of 200. But what if I say that there were 5 directors who were also the employee? Now, because they are employee, we will exclude them. So, in that case, we will exclude 5 and only 45 will be considered while calculating the number 200. It's not there in your syllabus, But because such kind of questions are asked, you should be aware. So please write this in your book. Students, this is my compiler, and it contains answers in full length, that is provisions, facts, analysis, and conclusion. If this question is asked in the exam, you will first explain everything about a private company. So what is a private company? We will write the definition and also the exclusions, yes? The restrictions. Then we will explain who should be included in that 200, who should not be included. In my previous video, I have already discussed the answer writing format, so I'm not discussing it again. In facts of the case, we will just explain the facts. No numbers are to be mentioned. Just a facts in 2 to 3 sentences. So here, it is a public company with 230 members. The board proposes to convert it into a private company. That's it. No need to write numbers. Then show the calculation, and in conclusion, we will write that because it is not exceeding 200, no need for reduction. So conclusion in just one sentence over here. Okay. So this is how you will frame the entire answer. Compiler is not included in the fast track lectures. It is a part of my regular lectures, but you can add it separately. It is available on my website. Okay. So that was a private company. We have covered everything. Did you highlight, did you write this? You can pause the video and write it. The third restriction is that it prohibits the subscription to the invitation of subscription to the public. These are the points. If these restrictions are there, then it is a private company. Otherwise, it is not a private company. It will be deemed to be a public company. If the above restrictions are not there, then it will be treated as a public company. It will be deemed to be a public company. So what should I do? By passing a special resolution, the articles should be amended because these restrictions are mentioned in the articles. Yes, please note, students. The restrictions are mentioned in the articles. So we will have to amend the articles to include the restrictions. Otherwise, if I don't include, I will be considered as a public company. If I do not comply with the provisions, now please note, students, this can be asked as a case-based question. Now, they will say that the private company started issuing shares to the public. Private company went for public offer. You are not complying with the provisions of Section 2, Clause 68. You will lose all your privileges and you will be treated as a public company. Is it clear? So these are the important key points. What kind of question can be asked on this? It can be asked on the third bullet point. That if I don't comply with the provisions, I will lose all the privileges of a private company and I will be considered as a public company. All the provisions of public company shall apply. Okay. What is a public company? Public company is a company which is not a private company. Subsidiary, a private subsidiary of a public company is also considered as a public company. See over here. Sorry, this is a government company. All right. If it's a public company, as Coal India, the subsidiaries are also considered as if a private subsidiary, actually for government company. Okay. So, public company, yes, it has a private subsidiary. This private subsidiary is also considered as a public company. Ma'am, does it mean that we need to alter the articles? We need to increase the number of members from 2 to 7. Do we need to increase the number of directors? Do we need to remove those restrictions? Nothing is required. You can continue to remain private by your articles. It is only that you will lose the privileges of a private company. All the provisions of a public company shall apply. So what is the meaning of a deemed public company? A private subsidiary of a public company is deemed to be a public company, although it continues to remain private by its articles. Continues to remain private by its articles means it will have those 3 restrictions in the articles. Members also will be only 2. Directors also minimum 2 only. Only thing is it will lose all the privileges of a private company. So you can write over here, no privileges of private company. All provisions of public company apply. We have already covered question 2 from the compiler. It was related to conversion of public to private company. Reduction was not required. Then we have classification on the basis of liabilities as company limited by shares, limited by guarantee, and also unlimited liability company. Company limited by shares, it means the liability is limited to the face value. If your face value is 10, you will pay only 10 rupees. If you have already paid 6, your liability now is only 4 rupees. Company limited by guarantee, the liability of the members is limited only to the amount of guarantee. This amount will be paid at the time of winding up. Generally, the companies which are non-profit or they don't require public money, they are incorporated as a company limited by guarantee. They may not have share capital. In that case, the liability is restricted only to the amount of guarantee. This will be received by the company at the time of winding up. But what if the company has share capital? Then there are two liabilities. One is the amount unpaid on shares, which can be called up anytime during the lifetime of the company. And the other is the amount of guarantee, which can be called up only at the time of winding up. Students, please note that company's liability is always unlimited. What we are discussing is liability of members. Liability of members may be either limited or unlimited. Limited may be by shares or by guarantee. Whenever we are discussing the liability, whenever I say liability, I am always talking about liability of the members. We never discuss liability of the company because it is always unlimited. Company cannot say, no, I am liable only for this amount. Rest you see, I don't know. Creditor, you asked from the members. Company's liability is always unlimited. Okay, what about unlimited liability company? Unlimited liability, then why are you incorporating a company? It is not that my liability is always unlimited. During the lifetime, I get to enjoy limited liability. We at the time of winding up, that the liability is unlimited. So at least during the lifetime, I get to enjoy limited liability. Now, what happens at the time of winding up? But before I proceed, please pause the video and write this. Okay. What happens at the time of winding up? See, the creditors, they go to the court and they apply for winding up. The court orders winding up of the company. They appoint a liquidator. The liquidator will sell the assets and pay off the liability. They find that the assets are insufficient. So they go to the members. The members give money and then liquidators give this money to the creditors. Okay. So can't the creditors go directly to the members? No. The creditors have a contract with the company. They don't have a contract with members. Members are stranger to contract. Can't the creditors or can the members pay directly to the creditors? No, the members have a contract with the company. They will pay to the company and the company will pay to the creditors. Okay. So in this case, the creditors will go to the court. The court will order winding up. They will appoint a liquidator. The job of the liquidator is to sell the assets and pay off the liabilities. They will then make call to the members that see the liability, that the assets are insufficient. Anyways, your liability is unlimited. So you please contribute. They will pay money and then the liquidator will pay that to the creditor. So this is how it works. Creditors, they cannot file case directly against members because they don't have a contract with member. They have a contract with the company. Member is stranger to contract for them. Okay, so this is what happens. Done writing. I don't think all this will be asked in the exam. Next and the last part for today's session is classification on the basis of control. Let us discuss government company. Now, this is also a concept which is important for exam along with the section number. Section 2, clause 45. Now, what is a government company? A government company means a company in which at least 51%, it is important for us to know it is at least 51%, not 50%, 51% of the paid-up share capital is held either by the central government or one or more state government. That is why I have written like this. Either one state government or more than one state government, partly by central and partly by one or more state government. So this is the definition. You need to learn the definition. Now, over here, please write, students, what is important? Learn the section number. learn the definition. That's it. Learn section number and the definition, because the question will be asked on that only. Okay. Now, in case the company has issued shares with differential voting rights instead of the paid up capital, you will consider total voting power instead. So government company is important for exam. It can be asked, please write over here. It can be asked as a case-based question. You will find many questions in the exam as well as your MTP and RTP. The definition must be learned by heart as it is. You can't write in your own words. Students, with this, let us conclude today's session. It was the first session and it was a very rapid one, but I gave you a lot of notes which you can refer one day before the exam. Now, there is some homework. After the lecture, you will sit and learn this on your own. Learn this chart on your own. Then close the notebook and write it on the basis of whatever you remember. Compare it with my chart. Highlight the errors. I missed this point. This I did not write. Try to find your mistakes. Close the book again. Again write it. When you write this, automatically you will be able to memorize it. Okay, will you do that for me? So today's homework is to learn these charts, close the book, and then write it on your own. Compare it with my chart, highlight whatever you have missed in your writing, and that you will remember till exam. Okay, now what is our agenda for the next lecture? In my next lecture, I will complete this chapter. Okay, so we will continue from foreign company. We will complete this chapter on types of companies, and then I will go through the important questions from this chapter. Okay, so I will discuss those questions which are important, and you please make a note of it. Refer those questions one day before the exam. Okay? There is also an MCQ on OPC which we will solve from our MCQ Smart book. So MCQ discussion and question answer discussion after we complete this chapter. So go on reading, go on learning. Even if you did not clear the previous attempt, don't be disheartened, students. Please remember that these failures are not going to determine how successful you are going to be 5 years from now. I know so many students who have failed multiple times. There was one person who failed 10 times in CA final and now is the owner of a very successful coaching class. So please don't feel that this is going to determine where you will reach in the future. Maybe this is just to teach you, how to improve yourself. Like I always feel, I'm a firm believer that whatever you think happens. It's not because I got influenced from Instagram. Okay. I always feel that whatever I think about myself will manifest. So when you say, I can do it, like Virat Kohli, he was going through a very bad patch. So he started telling himself, I'm good enough. I am good enough. I am good enough. And he turned out to be in exceptional form in the recent matches. So please tell only positive things to yourself. Say, I can do it. I can do it. This time I will clear. I have cleared my attempt. And only that will turn into a reality. This is not determining your future. I feel that, these failures, they are always there to teach us something. They are always there to help us improve, be a better person, be a better student. It teaches us to take failures. Nowadays, students cannot, not about students, children cannot accept failure. Like even my son, he will say, no, I don't want to do this because he feels in his mind that he's not going to, he's not going to succeed. So he doesn't want to try it. But that fear is not there in your mind now because you are, I should say, very brave. You have taken this decision to, leave that aside and try it for the next attempt. And I'm telling you, students, your efforts will pay off. Just keep working hard. Just stay focused like a horse who cannot see what is happening in the right, what is happening in the left. Just focus on the goal. So stay focused. Prepare well for your exam. I'm always there to help you and guide you. All right. So next lecture, we will complete this part and we will solve the relevant questions. I'll see you there.